All right, so I'm here to talk about my reading of Knife of Dreams. I'll put a accoutrement somewhere over here, I guess right there, which is book number 11 in Robert Jordan's high fantasy, epic fantasy, uh, Wheel of Time series. I don't know why I just drew this sudden blank here. So this is the last book. I won't say the Crossroads of Twilight was the penultimate book written by Jordan specifically and only. Knife of Dreams, book 11, is the book that he wrote. It's the last book that he wrote on his own 100%. Books 12, 13, and 14 were co-written by Brandon Sanderson per Jordan's notes for the continuation and conclusion of the Wheel of Time series. Now, the reason I'm saying that is because one of the things that is very true to the Knife of Dreams and to a lot of the response that I've gotten from individuals who've read the book and who've read or are very familiar and know this series from those who have read them per releases to new readers such as myself, is that Jordan really tried his best to conclude a lot of the running story threads that were happening previous to this book. So, with that being said, he was trying to close out the Elaine situation in which he's trying to gain the Lion Throne. He was trying to close out the situation with Perrin, finally rescuing Fael from the Shido camp. He was trying to, they were still working with Matt and Twan. There was still some workings with those two. I think that there was some development still taking place there that he was working on. And with Rand, I don't know, Rand is just kind of like the through line of all of these story threads. But it's really interesting because I remember being so bogged down with a lot of these story threads in books previous as they were developing and as they was initially getting on board and developing, and I'm always telling myself, when is he gonna close these storylines and move on to something else? I was always asking myself that, and I always had this sense in my head that there were bigger things that were going to take place within this series further down the road, and it's like, well, no, this is actually genuinely the storylines that he's focusing on. Perrin rescuing Fael, that's a genuine storyline. It's not a capsulated moment in the series. It's genuine. The Lion Throne is genuine. I always was in my head going, when is he gonna do something else? As we proceed closer and closer through the series, I'm like, when is something else gonna take place? So with that being said, Knife of Dreams was a relief to get through, to see those storylines being chopped up finally toward the end and snipped off. However, I have to say that for me, the reading or the climax of each of these storylines were mostly thunderously anticlimactic. And I know that, I had some people comment, because I read a lot of mysteries, and sometimes people try to come at me about like looking for mysteries within books that aren't mystery genre based, and it's like, well, to me, all books are a mystery, otherwise why read them? You have the answers, unless you went, you have the answers. The books ask a question, and you, the reader, have to read through the book and get the clues, foreshadowing, and etc., and all those different literary techniques in order for you to get to the conclusion of what it is the author is trying to say. That's the mystery. New criticism, reader response criticism, deconstructing criticism, structuralism criticism. There's the mystery of trying to solve what it is that you perceive as the meaning of that work. Now, with that being said, all books have a protagonist and generally so an antagonist. And when I say that, or when I get try to called out for looking for components or elements of mysteries within books, is because as a mystery reader, I prize or treasure the perspective and attitudes and opinions of the antagonist just as deeply, if not sometimes more, than the protagonist. So it is important for me as the reader, when there's a strict antagonist present, to get the opinions of this antagonist, to get the reasoning why these characters do what they do. And as I said, I found it very anticlimactic in Knife of Dreams. Savannah, as a Shido leader, she had this very striking and almost brilliant, a little neurotic, of course, but this striking presence within the series very early on when she decided what she wanted to do. We knew that she was trying to revenge the killing of her husband. I'm using that word husband loosely. Back in he set off to strike as a rebellion IL group in book number 4, but he was beheaded in book number 5 by Matt, which was another anticlimactic moment in which that I did not like the fact that Jordan did that off stage. I thought that was a very cheap shot. I'm calling it what it is. But my point is that it was very clear what Savannah wanted to do, and we had to weigh, as readers, how much investment that we have with this character through the preceding books, to the point of, to me, near exhaustion. I was tired of the Shido. Even with that being said, though, when I got to the Knife of Dreams, where that particular antagonistic character, Savannah, was finally met with her coming, there wasn't one. I wanted to hear from her mouth her frustration at having lost her. I want to hear from her mouth again why she set out on this mission. We knew that she was trying to revenge her husband, but she was also trying to gain, Rand as her husband, to solidify her power. And for the as an Aiel, the Kara Khan, as they call him. But that didn't happen in this book, and I was very disappointed in that. Part of me is also in this place where it's like, well, Jordan does often leave a little thread hanging, dangling, and then in the preceding books, you would get some of that. But I'm actually about 300 or 400 pages into Gathering Storm, and that really hasn't happened with Savannah yet. Like I said, she worked my last freaking nerve. I got tired of following the Shido. I could not really get into it with that particular storyline of Fael being kidnapped. But at the end of the day, I needed to have my reward of really landing why it is that this character Savannah did what she did, and making sure that it is clear and cut about what it is that she's going to receive as a form of punishment or so for what she's done. I'm pretty sure it will pop up in the last 3 books maybe, but I still like those opportunities where the antagonist character really goes head to head with the protagonist characters. In this case, I was hoping it would be Perrin. This is not necessarily new when it comes to reading this series, because in the past, in the beginning of the series, I've always complained about how I felt like the Forsaken characters were just not well drawn out to me. How that there was so much depth in there, and I really liked that. I wanted to really get into it. How did they become who they became? Cursory mentions and anecdotes of that were very much displayed, but just that full depth examination of these characters were something I was looking forward to. And then furthermore, their presence on stage going up against the protagonist of the series. I was not getting that in like the first 3 books. They were very much there was sort of like, almost like at one point Jordan was putting on this episodic thing going on where one Forsaken character was like the monster of the book, the monster of the week. You know what I'm saying? And I actually, at this point, reading The Gathering Storm, I actually wish that he kind of really stuck with that instead of bringing them back and such forth. But my point is that improved as the books proceeded forward. I got to see much more of the Forsaken characters, and I started to enjoy their time on stage. But now, in Knife of Dreams, now they have worn me out, because it's always the same thing with them. It's always, let's go into the dark chamber and let's sit around the table and let's backbite each other, and and cut our eyes at each other and sip wine, and the continuous remindings of her name Grandel. Randall's outfit is made of smoke and mirrors, not mirrors, not really mirrors, but you know what I'm saying. It's just like they were warm. I was really warming up to them, and that had a lot to do with Marquedian, having Marquedian stripped away from all that and putting her on stage and exchanging interactions with Nynaeve and the other two girls, Egwene and Elaine. But that is kind of worn, and going further from that, when it has ever came for a time for them to be dispatched by Rand, I never got that conversation between the two of why these antagonist characters are the way they are. It could be splayed out on the page, but I like to hear it specifically within their voice, given that opportunity. And Rand generally just dispatches them right away, and they come back. For whatever reason, they keep coming back unless they're killed with Balefire. So, with that being said, I did say that Jordan finally pitting Rand against a very specific Forsaken character that I've always had my eyes out for, waiting for her to show up on stage fully. It came about in Night for Dreams, and he kind of just dropped it. That confrontation happened, some amazing things happened, and then he just dropped it. I will say that it has picked back up in The Gathering Storm, and I got a lot more interesting. But the thing I'm gonna say is that I feel like Jordan would have done a better job at this Forsaken character if he had wrote the scenes that she was present in The Gathering Storm. Not that Sanderson did a terrible job, he didn't at all, but she just came at the tail end of the series to really be fully on stage, and I wish that happened a lot sooner within Jordan's application of his own work, if you will. So another story thread they closed out is Elaine's story thread, and she wrestling to gain the crown of Andor, the Lion Throne. In Crossroads of Twilight, there was this really big deal of what Elaine was going against, specifically as it concerns dark friends, Forsaken characters, and people within her camp that she can't trust. They will exit out the castle, and they will go into their hidey hole and do all these little these machinations of what they're going to do to try to stop her from getting the throne. And we actually addressed that fully in Night for Dreams, and what a letdown that was. What a letdown that was for that moment. I mean, it could have just been so much more. The only thing it really did was it made me really frustrated with the character of Elaine even further, because I just didn't understand that scene. Me, the reader, had a better, I was imagining a better way to tackle that scene, beginning with interrogating the one character that they already had underneath their thumb, so that they could have made a much more precise and insightful pushback against these characters who are trying to throw Elaine off the throne, away from the throne. But instead, with lack of information, Elaine got some characters killed. She has plot armor. There's nothing gonna happen to her, but she got these other people killed. And I was just kind of disappointed in that being the case, because these characters were characters who were really trying to help her from, like, I think the Crown of Swords on forward. That's book 7. They were really sticking with Elaine, and she got them killed, pretty much, some of them. But that decision just really irked me about Elaine. But I'm happy that she ended up gathering the throne, and I'm much more excited to see what's going to happen with her and her mother Morghese, when they're going to come back together. and how that interaction is going to come back into play. So, you know, I Knife of Dreams, it gets a lot of this is uh, Jordan at his best, and he's really coming back to form. Those are sort of the phrases and terms that characterize this book and his writing of it. And it's there's a yes and no in that. I did enjoy it immensely. I'm not gonna say I enjoyed it more than even Crossroads to Twilight. It's still like Crossroads to Twilight. It still required the same amount of patience to get through, the same amount of delegation of time to get through, and but it was still enjoyable in the sense that I am happy that I got through it, and I'm happy that these story threads closed, and that there was just a glimmer of some remnants of ways or directions that we can go moving forward. Like with Perrin having finally rescued Fael, there's a glimmer of it's changes in the dynamic within their relationship. And like I said, I want to see where Morghese finally connects with Elaine. Rand is he lost an appendage, and so I feel like that's another good form in terms of it's hindering him. So I know that he's gonna receive a power up soon, which I predicted, and it has occurred here in the Gathering Storm. Another thing that I'm kind of sad about is I feel like my favorite character, Nynaeve, she really carried a lot of the earlier books. I mean, I ain't trying to be biased and I ain't trying to be funny, but Nynaeve carried books 1 through 9. Beef with me if you want to in the comment section. Nynaeve, I'm gonna say it again. Nynaeve carried books 1 through 9. But I've noticed since then that Jordan has really pared her back considerably. And as a Nynaeve fan, inside I think it's reasonable, but at the same time I'm squealing like a pig, okay? But in exchange for that, it's sort of reverse in terms of Nynaeve in the beginning of the series going out with Elaine and Egwene. Now those two girls or women, especially Egwene, are getting much more prominent chapter space and storytelling narrative filling up within the series. Rightfully so for Egwene. And I'm actually enjoying her story more. It starts to make sense now with me with her because, she studied and trained underneath the wise ones in a period within the series that I just couldn't stop. I was so tired of it. But it makes sense now. It's very much making sense now why or how Jordan arranged her direction as a character, becoming the Emerald Seat and trying to rebuild the White Tower. So it makes sense with Egwene now. I think that she is probably the character that has the most, that's road is most lit. Her road is character arc is most directional and lit. And I can't wait to see what else occurs with her, which, as I said, I'm reading The Gathering Storm, and she is very profound in this book. I'm almost to the point, like, when are they gonna tip the tables and just go ahead and so she can just throw her Aes Sedai powers all over the tower and just tear everything up. But it's a process with her trying to rebuild the White Tower. It's a process, but I'm here for it. I'm definitely here for it. So I think that's it. I'll be probably finishing The Gathering Storm Monday. I started reading it about 4 days ago. I'll talk about that another time, but Brandon Sanderson writes with a breakneck pace. I mean, it is a stark difference in pace from Jordan's work to Sanderson taking over. Stark difference in pace. Very different. I'm finding myself culling through this book. And I never thought I would say that about a Wheel of Time book. All right, that's it. Knife of Dreams, book 11. I am close to the end. I'm close to the end. I just want to document my feelings about reading it. So I can watch this in a couple of years and be like, yeah, I remember those days. All right.